Good morning. It's a huge honor to be here. Thank you. I'm a horticulturalist, and listening to you today, I realize how our worlds do overlap. My passion for plants, your passion for your growing, your passion for your cows and your everything. We are the same story. However, mine is slightly smaller than all of you, because that's how I started. My husband turned our wardrobe into the cold frames. So he hung up his suits on a rail. We had no money, so he had to go on working, and he worked in space. I came from being a rock chick, playing at the very first Isle of Wight with Bob Dylan and the very first Glasgow, to BBC, and then I had 2 children in close succession. Those days, there wasn't the care there is now, so I was at home with them. And a girlfriend of mine came in and said, "Can I have some French tarragon? I'm doing an Elizabeth David recipe." And I thought, yes, I can grow that. I can do that at home with my children. And therefore, I can actually they can be part of my life. And I had nowhere to palm them off anyway. But apart from that, I then decided at that moment to be organic. I'd read Anne Balfour's book. I understood. I also didn't want anyone taking the herbs medicinally and I'd treating them with chemicals, because I wouldn't know what the result was. So from that very small beginning, my husband said one day, "Look, you've either got to stop or we move." And we were offered some land. That young man now has a PhD in climate change and is a Grantham Scholar and has just joined the company. That's my son. And my daughter is the other end of that polytunnel, and she is an artist. That was my first tunnel. I was so proud. Anyway, they didn't like the look of the tunnel, and they threw us off their land. That was all our savings. In between the tears, I was driving up and down this lane, and I found this cottage. It was sealed envelopes. We had to bid for it. And we thought, if we're going to go for it, we will bid what we can. So we did, and we got it. And it was totally derelict. So we had to move into a mobile home, and we had to do the good life. It was 1 acre. By the way, I didn't mention that Fortnum's Masons, I supplied them from my back garden in Bristol. Anyway, by 1992, I'd picked up garden centres, shops, and we were supplying certified organic herbs throughout the West Country and Fortnum & Masons. In 1992, we had a very, very, very hot summer, and garden centres said, "No, don't want any of your herbs, no way." And so I went moaning off to a friend of mine who had a nursery down the road, and he said, "Quit moaning, go and exhibit at the RHS." What he didn't realise was that my great-grandfather had got gold at Chelsea. My uncle was a member of the Linnea Society. The RHS? I can't go there. Anyway, I did. 1993, we got invited to Chelsea. So I borrowed our neighbour's horse box. Anyone who's been to Chelsea Flower Show and Build Up knows you can't take a horse box in, because they bring the lorries in like this. I had nowhere to bring the tailgate down, so I couldn't unload for a day. Anyway, we managed, and we got silver gilt, and that was a huge turning point, because this tiny nursery of 1 acre suddenly got known and got recognised. But there's many a slip. So by 1995, I am trying to balance wholesale, garden centres, their demands, their double Arctics turning up for their orders, getting all the neighbours into barcode, demanding young buyers, and by 2005, I'd expanded to accommodate them. I'd used the royalties of my first book to buy that extra chunk of land. What was an amazing feat. And then I decided with my husband, no more wholesale. We'd had an absolute disaster, and so we picked ourselves up, we went on with the shows, and in 2008, I was meant to be doing a show garden. Now, when you're doing a show garden at Chelsea, that would take over half this nursery to produce the plants for May, okay? The sponsors pulled on December the 22nd. I had grown all the plants. I had nowhere to turn. I rang the RHS and said, what am I going to do? And they said, oh, we can't fit you in. On January the 6th, they rang up and said, we have a space, not cuts have pulled out. Will you take their space? This was another major turning point, because that space that we created, my husband and I on our own, totally sponsored by ourselves, we won the Lawrence Medal, which is the best medal to win. It is given to the best exhibit shown at any show at the RHS. It was a first for certified organic plants. It is the only time it's been won by organic plants. And it was the first time for herbs. A very wise lady said to me, she said, Jekka, quit at the top. They'll remember you. So I did. But I went on creating gardens, and I went on teaching and having problems. Your speaker mentioned it today, with staff. They'd come to me, I would teach them because college didn't teach them practical horticulture, and blow me, they'd leave within 2 years, and all that effort, and when they're getting useful, they've gone. So I seriously thought, what am I going to do now? And I had this brainwave, and my darling family have supported me throughout it. It was bonkers. I created a herbetum. I was sitting in a very boring meeting on the council of the RHS. Hope you're listening, RHS. It was very boring. And I was looking around the room, and there was a man there. He had a pineatum. He had an arboretum. I had a herb farm. It didn't sound sexy. Looked up what the word eatum means. Eatum means a collection of. So any of you could have a pig eatum. I mean, you know, think about it. So I created this herbetum off the ground so that I could teach, and that's how it looked a year later. Wonder why the numbers dropped. Anyway, that's how it looked a year later. So I now teach. I've scaled my staff right down. Now they're building up again. And we do not do mail order plants anymore. I only sell direct from the farm, and I create gardens. So in 2016, I only create gardens at Chelsea if it's going to be planted on. I don't want any plants wasted. We then planted it at a hospice. It's all about health and well-being and about how these plants connect with people. And then in 2017, I did, I think, one of the best projects I've ever done. I worked with the homeless as my crew to create a garden from a really grotty space. We were sponsored by Joe Malone London Limited, and it was with St Mungo's. It was fantastic. And last year at Chelsea, I walked into Chelsea and I hear, "Here, Jack, what are you doing here? I'm here, I've made it." And that was one of those guys who worked on this garden, who when I met him looked down, and there he was building a garden at Chelsea. It is fantastic. Now, last year, this is what we look like. 2018, I've got a school, I teach, I've got the herbetum, I teach, I sell plants to landscapers, gardeners, to the public. Your open days in June. I open 12 times a year now. I use social network so I can tell my customers. We have 15,000 followers on Instagram. They follow what we're doing. It's not a lot, but it helps. And we have no budget. But my son, the young man you saw at the beginning, he is now working on the farm. He has a PhD in climate change. He's rebranded me. You heard about rebranding. My logo before didn't fit on an iPhone, so he's rebranded us. And now for next year, she says, whoops, gone one too many. For next year, this year now, I am actually going to be specializing much more in our UK native herbs. We have so many that people don't know how to use. I work with chefs, I work with foragers, and I'm also breeding plants. For the last 30 years, I've been breeding plants that survive our weather, that taste good. So I'll leave you with this one thought. Plants can survive without us, but we and this planet cannot survive without them. Thank you.